We have arrived, LFA 158. It's the pro debut for my next guest. He doesn't need an introduction. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you already know who he is. And we're doing it. It's the dude, Tyler
The
Jones.
dude,
Welcome, my friend. How
the
are you doing?
dude. Good. I might have to change my nickname to the dude.
I'm
I
just
know.
saying, I have to like throw that reference out because we don't have the dude hair anymore.
I
You
know.
chopped it
I
all
know. I
off.
was Big Lebowskiing it up for a very long time.
You still look good though. You still
Thank
look
you,
good.
man. It's the year of the mullet. I got the mullet haircut, which I won't show you now because I've had my hat on all day, so it looks atrocious. But I got the mullet haircut, and then I realized I was like looking around me and realized that everyone else did too, and I'm like, God damn! I
Hey,
thought
you
I was
know
being
what?
trendy, but everyone's got a mullet.
Come fight night. I know that you are going to look amazing. So you know what? Let's just marinate on what your hair will look like. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to this. But
No,
Tyler,
I'm excited. I get to walk out to mullet music now too, which is nice. That's a whole new genre of music, you know?
well, I will prepare myself to be amazed. Tyler, I wanted to just like reflect for a little bit, and it's like before I sat down and here I am talking with you, I realized to myself like I've been interviewing you for years, like plural years,
Yeah.
and it's really crazy to think about not only like what this platform has kind of like evolved into, but also seeing like your career and how it's evolved in parallel. Um, you were involved in a project. I was hoping maybe we could start here and maybe you could divulge a little bit more about it. You've been the subject of a documentary recently.
Yeah.
That's something that we hit on peripherally the last time we spoke. Is there any more that you can divulge about what's going on with your movie?
Yeah, a ton more. I'm glad you brought it up. So the project's called I'm Only Human. It follows my MMA career and really just this last fight and how I got into MMA and the oh my God, did you see that? That's hilarious. A cat just got startled by a bag. Uh, so yeah, the film's focus is to really illustrate what it's like to be an MMA fighter before you hit the big shows, before you start getting paid to do this, before there's the fame and the glory. There's just the fight, and that's where the title comes from, Only Human, because at the end of the day, that's what we are, and it's really embodied at this level, and we shot for months. He shot me at work. He shot me commentating fights. He shot the entire weight cut for my last fight at LFA. And then he got footage of the warm up. He got footage of the fight backstage, the doctor interaction backstage. And yeah, so start to finish, a very full story, and for those who follow my career, the ending of the story, but I think there's a lot of unknown that doesn't really get shown a lot in MMA media, right? Like a weight cut start to finish, like we see little clips, but like we really often skip out on the dark times. And he got all that stuff. Like it's full frontal, there was no hiding. He was just there. It was an interesting experience. But yeah, we recently got the trailer. I can't share it yet with the public, um, but it is coming soon. And then there will be, once the trailer comes out, there will be kind of like a crowdsourcing, crowdfunding kind of timeline where we'll try and raise funds for the director to finish editing the movie, and then um, yeah, from that spot, once the movie gets complete, we're done shooting now. So
Yeah, it's all
from
post
from
production.
there, he's just there's submission to Emmys and putting it up for rental and all that stuff. So it's exciting times, man. And I'll show you the trailer out there if that'll make you happy. But yeah, it's really when I saw it, I mean, I was floored. I was jaw dropped. I teared up, and I know the story, So he it was an interesting experience. It's a guy who I never met before filming this, and now it's someone who knows me better than most people do in the world, like more than some family members, right? Like spent a lot of time with this guy, and it's awesome, and he killed it, and it's gonna be great.
Without divulging too much, and maybe this is a bit of a premature question, but for the person that's tuning in and watching that, like what is like the key part about that story? If there's because there's a lot of content there, And
Yeah.
as you well know, humans have like the memory of goldfish. Like we're very
Right.
we bust out our phone. We start playing Candy Crush after 30 minutes of not being stimulated. But what I did want to kind of key in on is like what is like the central theme or the biggest part of your story that you want people to remember after they get done watching it?
Well, I think for me, I think it goes two ways, and the film can be viewed as so many different ways. I think from the director's standpoint and why the movie's being made is, in relation to the title and that we're only human, right? The fighters we're just people at the end of the day. We get to go in there, keyword, we get to go in there, right? And perform for that 15 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever it was. But then afterwards, it's back to reality. And I think it's important for people to see like what really goes into preparing for a fight at the amateur level. That it was on my last fight. It was an LFA fight, so like it felt like a big show, but at the end of the day, it was still the amateur level, and I think that's the biggest thing to take away just from watching the movie. And then for me, like um I think what I would want people to take away from it is just staying true to your path and where you feel you want to go in life is where you should go. I tried so many different things um, across the span of my life thus far, and fighting's really been the only thing that I felt like, yes, this is me, right? And I feel like it's very easy to see when people aren't true to themselves or doing something that's untrue to their character. And for me, fighting just really kind of put me in my place and made me feel like this was what I was born to do. And I think this documentary will show that and maybe motivate others, not just in fighting, but in life itself, to really chase after that thing you feel you should be doing.
Running this podcast is a ton of work. That's why I like to unwind. I like to have a couple beers. I like to have a glass of wine or two every once in a while. It doesn't take much of it to make me feel like trash the next day. Headaches, upset stomach. We've all been there. It's the worst. Your weekend is completely ruined. That is why my go to is pregame. It is a revolutionary elixir from my friends at Vitality Boost. One scoop with a glass of water before you indulge and another before you go to bed is the only investment you need to make to be on track for a productive next day. It's not just for drinkers. Fighters love it too. After hitting the scales, I know what you do. You go and you grab a sports drink or you grab something else to get you the electrolytes that you need. I personally know some fighters who use this as their go to coming off the scales because they want the electrolytes without the sugar, the artificial flavors, or any of the other garbage that you'll find in other products. Go to vitaliboost.com and use my code basement at checkout to let them know that I sent you. You'll get a discount for your trouble. You've got nothing to lose. It's a 60-day money back guarantee, and we ship this stuff worldwide. Check it out. The link for this is in the description. I know you're going to love it. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to hearing more news about that. We'll put a bookmark in this conversation. I'm sure we'll be talking about it again. What I do want to talk about, though, shifting gears, is about your most recent performance in the cage. It was a very different Tyler Jones. I haven't seen this
Yeah.
guy before. We're not talking about putting people in guillotines. We're not talking about triangle chokes. We're talking about knocking people out. So, with that being said, I would want to turn the mic over to you, sir, and for you to explain to the good people out there. Tell me how you set that up. Tell me what you recollect in the brief amount of time you shared the cage with your last opponent.
Last fight was my first fight with one of my new coaches, Barry Hoppin. And Barry's been in the game forever. We're talking about a guy who used to train with Pat Miletich, knew Robbie Lawler when he was like 19 years old. Like this guy's been around the game forever. And he does a really good job like tapping into the fighter's psyche before a fight. Um, and he tapped into mine for sure before this last one. And with him and Danny together, they're such a good brain trust and they really play off each other and complement my style well. And they just got me ready to, when I walked in there, I was ready to do whatever it took to get my hand raised. And not only that, but I wanted to impress the matchmakers and the brass at LFA. And I feel obviously I did do that, right? Because now we're here, 4 months later in a position to make our pro debut with them. But yeah, man, I went out there willing to engage in violence and really take an aggressive step towards making that a reality. And that's what happened. The first exchange of the fight, I knew he came out very strong. We talked about that. He kind of comes out hard to make you grapple with him, and then he's got some good submissions. So I cracked him with the left hand, like the first exchange, and wobbled him. And then from there, I was like, oh man, this is going to be a fun night for me. And yeah, that's what happened. There was a little more trading on the feet. I got him to circle to my left leg. I head kicked him. Ended up breaking his jaw in half with the head kick, and then once I got on top of him, I just placed a couple more shots in that same area, and the ref stepped in, and first round stoppage, the first one in my career, and I want more of them for sure.
It was the very first win of yours since 2021. There was a little bit of a stretch. You encountered some adversity back in the win column for the first time in a couple of years. What
Yeah,
was that experience like? As like your two most recent fights, it's like, it's like a funeral after the fight. It's like, oh man, we're not
yeah,
happy. Like all that work for nothing. Like it's that normal like emo stage that all
right.
fighters go through when it doesn't go your way. Now it's that's not the case anymore. Like, you're back in the win column, back to getting rewarded for all that hard work and effort. Like, what was that experience like for you, like to be on the right side of a fight after a couple of years of
Man,
adversity?
it was a weight off my shoulders, you know. It it was so freeing to kind of get back to where I was, back in the Kai fight kind of mindset, or especially the Slate fight mindset. Um, because in those fights, I was just excited to go out there and compete, and in the fight against Sheldon Struble and later, which I think is like the worst performance I'll have in my entire career against Kevin Souza. Um, I was so like, I was just going through the motions to get to fight night to see what would happen and where I would go next, right? I wasn't actually thinking about the fight. I was just thinking about getting there. Like, let's just get there. And that's the wrong way to go about it. I think at the end of the day, like I keyed in on earlier, we get to do this. We don't have to do this. And before I felt like I kind of have to do this to get to the next step. And that was the wrong way of looking at it. So coming off that loss to Kevin, I knew that I needed something to really show myself like, hey, this is what you're about. This is what you're capable of. And you are made for this, just to remind me. And then too, like we brought up, like the documentary shooting, right? So we're shooting a documentary for this fight. He's in backstage with me. Like, what kind of ending would it be if I lost, right? I mean, added pressure for sure to throw that in there. But in my career, I think I've showed a lot when I'm on, I can eat that pressure, and the pressure makes me elevate to another level. And I think that's what we saw that night. And I'm very excited to kind of get back to that mindset next week.
When in MMA, we always talk about learning. We always talk about how critical that is and how we constantly need to learn to sharpen our skills, put more tools in our toolbox. And ironically enough, it seems like the only time I hear about learning is after loss. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I got knocked out. So these are the things that we need to do. And that makes sense to me. But I'm also wondering in your case, after putting on a performance like you did, you're able to get a knockout. Everything's perfect. Everything's humming along. Well, I'm saying that term relatively perfect. I'm saying it relatively. That's my word, not yours. But how do you learn when things are going well? How do you stay humble? How do you extract the wisdom to make you a better fighter coming off of a win? That's got to be hard to do.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. I think for me, what I noticed was that it was validation for the things that I know I do well in the gym, but wasn't able to do well in a fight yet. I always had glimpses of little things I did well striking, or little things I did well grappling in fights, but I never felt like I got to show the true spectrum of what I'm capable of. And that fight, I showed that I can really cause damage on the feet if you stand there and kickbox with me. So finally having that, like, not only the understanding was there, but the proof, right? Like the cold hard proof of like actual results helped me kind of learn that, like, oh, I'm capable of this and I'm capable of just going out there and doing this, you know. And then also like learning what it's like to be in a bigger show like the LFA. Sorry, I'm just gonna remove my cat here because he's chewing on these cords. Bastard. Yeah, like learning what it's like to be in a show like that. You know, it's a whole different feel, and for me, it almost made me feel more comfortable with everything. I felt like, man, this is like what I always envisioned fighting would be, right? Like a lot of times in the amateur scene, like we come up in these dingy spots, you know, and it all feels borderline illegal sometimes when we're fighting. But yeah, the LFA at Mystic Lake Casino, I mean, that's a spot right there. Like it's a beautiful setup they have, and you're taken care of by the LFA, and man, like it's a whole nother thing. So I think, yeah, just learning what you're capable of, and then learning, you know, how to perform. I think were the biggest takeaways from me. Even though, like you said, coming off a win, it is kind of hard to learn those lessons, but important ones for sure.
You get back to Chicago. At what point do you go back to Intercept and talk to your coaches about what's next? At what point do you start talking about making the pro debut?
I think honestly, like I was probably in the gym the week after. Um, so I mean, not only do I train so much there, but I also teach like 4 times a week at Intercept, right? So, um, it's such a big part of my life that like we were right back at it right away. We hit the ground running, and Danny and I had the conversation before the fight that if it was a good performance, it's time to go pro, and that's what we did. But there were stipulations. Like I had to show him that I can get past the mental, you know, hiccups that I had in prior fights, and I had to show him that I was able to deliver on some things. And once we made those connections, you know, it was an easy choice for both of us. And you know, not long after the LFA fight, I got to sign with Sucker Punch Entertainment with Brian Butler, and again, like that's such a huge move in someone's career, you know, to have representation that sits at that altitude. Yeah, and once we got with him, it was kind of we just hit the ground running. You know, he wants me to stay active. I I tell him whatever, you know how I am, whatever, whoever, whenever, let's get on a card and let's make it happen. And it was, yeah, it was pretty quick. You know, it's only been 4 months, and that sounds kind of like a long time, but to do a camp, you know, this camp was like 2.5 to 3 months long. So it was pretty quick.
For people that are thinking about making that decision on going pro, it's one that shouldn't be made lightly. It's like getting a tattoo, right? It's like
Yeah.
once you make that decision, like you can't unmake that decision. Like that's on you. And like you can't go back. It is what it is. So for you, like if you had to like give like if you had to have this conversation with anybody that's like maybe thinking about going pro, like you just made that decision, but like what are some like general indicators that you would share? I know everybody's different, but like Coach Tyler,
Yeah.
what are like some of the like key non-negotiable things that a fighter has to check off in your mind in order to make the leap?
I think one of the biggest things for me that I found the difference was like living the professional athlete ethos, right? Like living that lifestyle is so important to making the next step
Mm-hmm.
into pro, right? And it's not all about training. Training does get ramped up, and you know, getting ready for 5 minute rounds is not fun. But there's a certain added, you know, you have to add things in, right? When now that you're a professional athlete, you have to add in, you know, a greater focus on recovery. You have to add in a greater focus on nutrition. You can't go in there with any type of deficiency that's self brought on, or due to poor preparation. You know, so if you were kind of just cutting 2 pounds to get an amateur fight, you can't do that anymore. You're gonna get hurt out there, right? So I think the biggest thing that I would tell people is make sure that you take some time, write down everything that goes into a fight camp, review it with a coach or a pro fighter in your gym, and see where things can be tightened up, and see where things can make changes. Like this camp, I just started working with Lionheart Performance Lab. Um, Amin Shizmaniak trains with us at Intercept. He does a lot of like soft tissue massage and sports massage stuff, and that's those are the extra steps that you have to take in order to be at the highest level. And we only get to do this for so long, right? Like the governor on this is it gets worn out pretty quick. Like we don't get to hang around until our late 40s, and we only have so many opportunities to compete. And if you're going to take this step to go pro, you have to make sure that you're putting yourself in a position to get as much out of it as you can, right? Like you can't put one foot in, one foot out on this game. You're going to get hurt. And I think that's part of it. And then the second part is just making sure that you come to the table knowing there's going to be heartbreak, there's going to be injury, there's going to be a lot of different things that come with this pro step, right? Like the risk of injury is increased greatly when knees and elbows and heel hooks and all submissions are legal and oblique kicks and all that stuff get introduced to the game. So coming to grips with that and understanding it's a reality is another thing that is a hard pill to swallow, I think, but a necessary one.
Yeah, and that's why not everyone can do this. This is a sport for a minuscule fraction of the population. Like this isn't baseball, this isn't basketball. Like the severity, like the outcomes, the penalties, the what you put on the line is completely different in this game, and that's what makes it what it is.
Right, 100%. Yeah, there's a quote that I really follow and really think that it's an important one for us. But to be a pro fighter and to be the best fighter that you can be, you have to strive to be uncommon amongst the uncommon, right? David Goggins 101. But it's true, right? Because we're already in there with uncommon people to be a fighter. But if you want to be a great fighter, you have to be uncommon amongst the other uncommon people and your crew that you're running with, in the community that you're running with. So that's a constant battle, man. And that's why I do this. That's why I fight, right? I'm trying to find the best version of me. What can I achieve? It's selfish. It's a selfish sport, right? It has nothing to do with like, oh, I just like beating people up, or I just like being a tough guy, or I like the cameras and all that stuff. Like, I want to see what I'm capable of achieving. I want to see what can happen in the face of danger and just continue to grow. Who can I be at the end of the day when it's all said and done? Who was I, and did I reach the potential that I think I'm capable of reaching?
May 19th, we enter the cage, and it's against a solid opponent. His name's Alex Martinez. He's also making his professional debut. He's an undefeated amateur fighter. I have seen a couple of his bouts before. The one I recall watching him fight. I'm actually looking at his Tapology right now. I remember watching him fight at LFA 124. I did catch that fight. I think of your opponent. I immediately key in on his wrestling. I think he's a high level wrestler, and I'm very curious to see just kind of like how his games evolve. But it looks like you're gonna have your work cut out for you. I think he's a very solid opponent. I think he's gonna test you. What I will ask you is when you got his name, when you found out that you were going to fight Martinez, obviously we all go to the Tapology. Obviously, we go and we try to see what film there is of the opponent to get kind of a rough idea of what they bring to the table. But I'm comfortable asking you, Tyler, like, what makes your opponent a dangerous one, in your opinion?
I think there's a lot that Alex brings to the table that's dangerous to me in this fight, right? He's a great wrestler, as you hit on. That's a huge threat, especially for someone like myself that is a comes from a jujitsu background, right? I think he's very explosive. He obviously has some great strength to him too. I think he's got a great gas tank. And um, he's very active when he's on top, right? He doesn't hold, he's not trying to eke out victories on top. He's actively trying to pass, actively trying to get to arm triangles, back control, and he's peppering in ground and pound whenever he has the chance. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot that Alex brings to the table that I think makes this an exciting challenge for me. And that's kind of what we saw when we look at the Tapology. That's what I see across the board. But we also see a guy who's fairly new to the sport. His first fight was only a year, I think, ago or something along those lines. And we're both kind of young in the sport, right? Like I've been around and in the local, at least the MMA community, people know who I am, but I've only been here for 4 years. That's not that long. I've only been training for 4 years. So this is it's a battle of kind of two up and coming guys who showed that we have the stuff to make it in the pros in our amateur career, and one of us is going to have a very unwelcoming welcoming party to the pro leagues, and I'll be damned if that's me.
Tyler, I want to ask you a little bit. It's a professional fight, and pro fights, we're talking about a totally different can of worms here. We're talking about not only 5 minutes, but we're talking about a completely different rule set. Now, all of a sudden, you have a wide array of techniques and tools available to you that you previously have not been able to use. How does that figure into your preparation for this upcoming bout against Alex?
Yeah, it's been it's almost like playing the early levels of a video game, and you don't really have all the weapons or all the abilities to do what you want to do, and then all of a sudden you unlock that next level and you have so many new things to play with. So camp's been really not only grueling and tough, but it's also been really fun to grow as a martial artist and add new weapons, to the bank, because knees and elbows in Illinois, I don't you can't even throw elbows to the body on the ground. So and knees, like it's hard to throw knees in the clinch and not be over aware of where they're going, and especially someone like I'm very present when I'm fighting in there. So a lot of times I wouldn't even throw knees in the amateur fights because it's like, well, what if it goes to the wrong place? So adding those tools, being able to train them, have been huge in the preparation for this, and I'm very excited to kind of be given opportunities to test those tools out. But also defensively, like it's a whole other defense now, right? Like you can't hang out with your head down by someone's knee. You can't allow someone to really tie your arms up and get elbowed in the face. It's a whole nother thing.
Absolutely. And 5 minute rounds, it can be a good thing, but also
Yeah.
can be a not so good thing. Because I mean that's a long time. That's a lot. Like 3 minutes is a long time. That's a very long time. It doesn't go by. It goes by in a blink of an eye when you're watching a fight, but and maybe you kind of feel that way sometimes when you've competed in the past, where it just goes by like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, 3 minutes is a very long time. Now we're talking about going from a potential 9 minute fight to a 15 minute fight. So you're talking about, almost flirting with double the length of time. And that's got to, in terms of like how you would prepare your cardio and get ready, that has probably got to be a totally different layer of difficulty.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, there's an excitement that comes with it because I've gotten, I've come up short in the past, where I wish I just had more time, and the Sheldon fight comes to mind where I have the guy in an arm bar and I'm ready to finish, but time runs out and I rushed it, and we have 2 more minutes to work if that's the case in a pro bout. So I'm excited in that aspect, but you're 100% right. Like the preparation for this fight was wildly different than anything I've ever done before for any prior fight, for any prior jiu-jitsu competition. I mean, we worked, I've never worked harder in my life for a fight. I've never been in this good a shape. I've never felt like I feel right now. I mean, I got my resting heart rate the other day was 48. I've never been that low. Usually I'm at like 56 or something like that. But yeah, real just like very good shape, very ready and prepared. One thing that I'll always tell myself ever since the Kevin Souza fight is I'll never walk out there again not prepared to fight, right? If things don't go your way in there, things don't go your way in there, but never again will I walk in there not prepared to fight. And we definitely made sure that that was a reality this fight. I am 100% prepared to go 15 minutes or 1 minute in this fight.
Well, there we go. And Tyler, I have one final kind of question for you, and it's mainly this because I don't ask questions about game plans. Everyone who's watched my show for any length of time knows I never ask that question. But what I will ask you is, what do you? Obviously, the goal is to get a win, but like, what are some of the other objectives that you have in this bout that you would feel comfortable talking about? Whether they be like just goals that you have for yourself, or I'd love to hear just kind of from your perspective, like what are some of the boxes that you want to tick off in this fight?
Yeah, I think one of the main box that I want to check is to go out there and stick to the game plan.
Mm-hmm.
Go out there and and stand in the face of the fire and still stick to the game plan. He's a hometown kid. I'm sure, I'm gonna get booze rained down on me. I've been there before. It's not a big deal to me, but there's a lot of different factors that can throw you off from what you're supposed to go in there and do. And yeah, one of the main things that I want to make sure I do is do exactly what we've been training for the last 8 weeks or however long it's been. So that's a big one for me. And then also just trying to more of a mental thing, trying to just be more present and appreciate the moment, right? Before, after, during, even the weight cut, right? The weight cut sucks, but like appreciating that I get the opportunity to go out there and do this, and I get the opportunity. For me, it's been a dream of mine to be a professional MMA fighter, and I get to make that dream become a reality next Friday. And it's important for me to really be present and take all of that in whenever I get the chance. It very easily, this happened last fight where like it's such a whirlwind and it happens so fast, and especially that fight, it's a quick finish. And then all of a sudden it's over and you're sitting with the people that you're with and you're like, holy shit, like it already happened.
Great.
And it felt like it was fleeting so fast. And for this one, I really like want to try and bask in all of the feelings that I feel on Friday.
I wonder if you're gonna get like a paper check or if they're just gonna like Venmo you. I wonder how like
I don't
how
know. That's interesting. It might be. I know that.
you might not have a memento is all I'm saying. Like they might just
Yeah,
like PayPal you. Like that would be so anticlimactic,
just
wouldn't it?
screenshot it.
I guess. Like, aren't you supposed to? I mean, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think so. I know that technically we're all like independent contractors, right? When we start getting paid.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I think they have to report it somehow. So it might even be cash. Who knows? It might be a check.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's check will cash it hanging on the wall.
Well, you enjoy a bag of Skittles and maybe some In-N-Out burger or something
Yeah.
with your winnings, sir. I know, as always, that there are a lot of people that work with you behind the scenes to put you in the position to have the opportunity to compete here next week. Who are some of those people? Who are the people that are working with you this camp to make sure that you have what you need to get the job done?
This is always the part that this is what I get the most anxiety about when I plan
Mm.
interviews with you is trying to remember all the
Indeed,
sponsors.
it is a pressure cooker.
So I hit on a earlier Lionheart Sport Performance Lab. Uh, just started working with him. I'm going to be on like a 12-week program with him to get increased mobility and making sure that my body's right coming out of this fight and then into the next fight. So shout out to Amin over at Lionheart Performance Lab, FFS Chicago, GA Paving. Um, there's just been so many companies, local companies that have stepped up and taken care of me, not just for this fight, but across my career. Skeptic Distillery is one of those companies that has always been there. Jimmy's Red Hots, a company that's always been there for me from start to finish. As we talked about the documentary, Sonic Palette Productions, they've been a big supporter for me. And outside of that, my coaches, Barry Hoppin and Danny Summers, all my teammates at Intercept MMA, and yeah, my girlfriend, who's been a rock through all of this. This has been a really, really, really intense camp, and there's an intensity that I'm carrying with me, I think, to perform in this fight the way I think I'm going to. And she has to kind of bear that weight a little bit, and she's done such a good job just kind of rolling with the punches and and just I don't know. She's been so flexible with me this camp, and I really appreciate all the just acceptance from her and ability to kind of be there and just be flexible with what's going on and how I feel. And yeah, that, and then my family too, my brother, my mom, always sticking around, always there for what's next, always excited for what's next. And yeah, and Mom's Basement MMA too. Don't
Damn
forget
right.
it.
All the way to the top. Let's go.
Oh, and Sucker Punch Entertainment. I can't forget them. Brian Butler over at Sucker Punch. I'm the new guy on the roster, but Brian still treats me like I've been there for 10 years. He answers every text, answers every question. It's hard to beat some. You hear about these top tier management firms, and you kind of think like, oh, I just probably fall in the mix, but Sucker Punch is not that. I mean, we're talking about a guy who represents Jamal Hill, Rose Namajunas, all these stars of the industry, but we're texting on a Thursday night at 10 p.m. about some bullshit. So yeah, it's been a really great experience with them too.
So thank you, Sucker Punch, and thank you, Tyler. We'll do it again very, very soon, my friend.
Yes.
Always a pleasure.